At a small bank in the suburbs of Los Angeles, Parker's masked crew carried out the robbery. Surprisingly, despite being threatened at gunpoint, the bank manager adamantly refused to open the safe, showing defiance and a lack of fear of death. The crew found themselves in a dilemma, but Parker, with his sharp intuition, quickly noticed a detail. The manager's eyes repeatedly glanced towards a female teller among the hostages. She was the very person he was pursuing. Hearing this, Parker ordered the manager to publicly punch a colleague standing next to him. That way, even if he had to compromise and open the safe, he could still maintain a heroic image in the eyes of his beloved. The manager, hearing the threat to kill the goddess in his heart, panicked, gritted his teeth, and rushed to swing a punch at the young man beside him. Unexpectedly, the action did not earn him the girl's gratitude. Instead, she turned to warn him that his actions would get everyone killed. The manager's face became extremely disheartened. Parker's crew began stuffing the cash into bags. Just when everyone thought things were going smoothly, a car quietly pulled up at the bank's back door. The driver was just an ordinary man who, trying to avoid paying the parking fee at the front, intended to enter through the back door. However, as he pushed the door open, he suddenly heard the robber's shouts echoing from inside. He panicked, immediately shut the door, and rushed back to his car to inform his wife and daughter that the bank was being robbed. The wife instinctively wanted to call the police, but the husband stopped her and pulled out a pistol from the car. This man, considering himself clever, staked out the back door, planning to ambush the robbers when they came out. As Parker and his accomplices carrying the stolen money bags prepared to retreat, the man suddenly opened fire and amidst the chaos stole the entire $400,000. An enraged Parker immediately gave chase. The car sped wildly and finally smashed through the racetrack's fence, bursting onto the course during an ongoing race. Despite the husband pushing the gas to the limit, Parker stayed in relentless pursuit. Ultimately, the car was strongly struck by a panicked horse, causing it to lose control and crash into a roadside barrier. The husband stepped out, ready to resist to the end, but Parker shot him in the head through the gap between the horses. Parker looked inside the car and saw the wife and daughter trembling with fear. He retrieved the money bag and at the same time tossed back a wad of cash for them to handle the arrangements. Right after, he quickly slipped into the getaway car, driven by his accomplice, and rushed away from the track. However, this operation was far from smooth. They had only managed to steal a mere $400,000, yet suffered a death and injuries among the crew members. As the mood dampened, a crew member named Zen openly took off her jacket, preparing to clean up. Just as Parker was gazing intently at her alluring figure, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a sinister smile on her lips. In the very next second, she pulled a pistol from her pocket and suddenly opened fire on her teammates, instantly taking down everyone. Only Parker, thanks to his keen instincts and quick reflexes, smashed the window and frantically fled. Zen pursued him, intending to silence him. During the shootout, Parker was shot and fell down a cliff. When he regained consciousness, Parker was in a shabby motel, his wound roughly bandaged by the landlady. The thought that Zen not only betrayed and killed all his teammates, but also pocketed all the stolen money, inflamed Parker's heart. He burst into a guest room, ignoring the couple inside, and immediately used a hot water kettle to smash the wall, retrieving the passport and cash he had hidden in a secret compartment. Parker prepared to set out to find Zen and exact his revenge. Before leaving, Parker visited his best friend Philly's house and personally delivered the bad news to his wife Grace. He solemnly promised that he would definitely retrieve the money and personally hand over the share belonging to his friend. At the same time, Parker began his path of revenge. Private banker Lozini also received news that the case had been closed. This person was a former detective in an American TV series, so his influence could be called the Lozini Gang. When he learned that the robber was Parker, his expression immediately turned grave. 3 years ago, the two had clashed, and Parker's cold-blooded and ruthless killing methods still terrified him to this day. However, as a gang boss, even if he felt apprehensive, he absolutely couldn't stand idly by. He immediately ordered his men to hunt down Parker, unaware that this action would stir up a hornet's nest. Thanks to his friend Grofield's news channel, Parker learned that Zen had a close relationship with a Frenchman named Reggie. He knocked out Reggie's driver, disguised himself as him, set a trap to extract information, and forced Reggie to reveal Zen's whereabouts. Under Parker's threat, Reggie finally confessed that Zen was once a member of a South American dictator's elite bodyguard unit and was very likely hiding in an unfinished building in New Jersey. However, before Reggie could give the exact address, their car was rammed violently by another vehicle and came to a halt. immediately after a group of fully armed men with South American accents surrounded the car. They didn't realize, however, that Parker had feigned unconsciousness and suddenly launched an attack. Reggie, inside the car, was instantly riddled with machine gun fire. Just then, Parker suddenly remembered the driver locked in the trunk. This driver also moonlighted as a part-time bodyguard. In this situation, unaware of what was happening, he decisively pulled out the gun hidden in his pant leg and fought the attackers to the death. Ultimately, this brave driver perished alongside the enemy. When the smoke cleared, Parker stepped out of the car. The only survivor was the driver of the car that had rammed them earlier. Parker coldly shot him in the shin, then stole a car parked by the roadside and quickly drove away. When Parker arrived at the building, he had forced the driver to disclose Zen was arguing fiercely with a strange man. When she saw Parker, she was clearly stunned for a moment, but then she immediately stated frankly that she had spent all the money. The man next to her, sensing Parker's murderous gaze, frantically tried to pull out a gun, but was shot down by Parker without mercy. Zen angrily claimed that all their efforts, all the money they had acquired, had gone up in smoke. Parker was utterly astonished to hear that all the money was gone. He not only sought revenge for his teammates, but also wanted to reclaim their share of the money, but now everything had come to nothing. His expression immediately darkened. Seeing this, Zen hurriedly explained that the man who just died was actually involved in a bigger operation. He possessed the timing and route for the transport of an armored vehicle carrying $4 million in cash. However, Parker's cold gaze instantly saw through this lie. Zen changed her story, saying the real target was a certain billionaire's mansion, and the man who just died held the security system password. Unfortunately, this lie was recognized by Parker once again. Seeing that she couldn't continue lying, Zen had no choice but to reveal the hidden truth. It turned out that 4 months ago, her country accidentally discovered a Spanish shipwreck in its territorial waters. The shipwreck was named Lady Aneto, a 15th century relic of staggering value. The sheer archaeological significance alone exceeded their entire nation's gross domestic product. This shipwreck brought $1 billion to the treasury overnight, which should have been enough to save countless citizens suffering from poverty and hardship. However, the dictatorial president, driven by insatiable greed, decided to seize this vast fortune for himself. Ostensibly, he announced he would goodwill ship the treasure to the U.S. for exhibition at the United Nations to showcase national glory. In reality, he was both the guard and the thief, intending to secretly steal the treasure during transit. By then, all losses would be accounted for as national debt, while he alone would pocket the enormous fortune. Zen's mission was to beat the president to the punch and seize this treasure. After hearing the story, although Parker was slightly hesitant, the staggering figure couldn't help but tempt him. What they didn't know was that the Lozini gang was also targeting this treasure. The most valuable item was a massive jewel-encrusted statue of the sea god on the bow of the ship, which alone was worth $500 million. They planned to steal the statue and sell it to America's richest billionaire, Musk. Zen led Parker to the base of her rebel organization. They were preparing a fake sea god statue to deal with the upcoming chaotic battle. Since the man who held the information was dead, Parker and Zen went to his boyfriend to fish for information from him. The man was utterly devastated after learning his lover had been murdered and easily disclosed that the information might be hidden inside a toy upstairs. Before Parker could go upstairs, Grofield, who was on guard outside, spotted Lozini's men arriving and quickly sounded the alarm. Lozini's men had also come to obtain that information. During the interrogation, the man suffered a heart attack from overwhelming grief and collapsed to the floor. Zen seized the opportunity to pretend to be a doctor, and in the process retrieved a pistol the man had hidden under the table. Parker took advantage of the chaos to rush upstairs, but faced with a closet full of stuffed animals, he had no choice but to take them apart one by one to search. He finally found an item inside one of the stuffed animals, but just then, Lozini gang's right-hand man Kincaid rushed up. Although Kincaid had extraordinary fighting skills, he was still no match for Parker. Parker easily subdued his opponent. Finally, Parker successfully obtained the treasure transport information. This batch of treasure would be transported by train, and the real opportunity lay with Zen's accomplice, an insider who had been bribed within the railway company. Parker did not trust Zen's rebel organization and decided to form his own team. They planned to use the insider to increase the train's speed and then sabotage the automatic safety system on the station tracks. Running at high speed, the train would lose control and derail at a dangerous curve. They would just need to wait at the crash site to quickly use a truck to intercept and steal the treasure from the train car. However, as night fell, an old stalker of Zen's from her military days secretly tracked her down. He could never accept Zen's betrayal of the organization, and even less that she had fallen into Parker's arms. He violently stepped in to punish his romantic rival. When Parker woke up, he found himself chained to an iron pipe in the suburbs. Cold wind howled, accompanied by bone-chilling snow, yet the man showed no mercy, ordering his accomplices to douse Parker with ice water. He also revealed that they had proactively contacted the Lozini gang and disclosed Parker's location. Parker was inwardly horrified upon hearing this, and immediately cursed these guys for digging their own graves. If they really handed him over to Lozini, they wouldn't escape death either. At first, the man thought Parker was just being stubborn, but soon the roaring sound of car engines reached them from afar. His accomplices went out to check, but after just a moment there was a pathetic scream, and then everything fell silent. Only then did the man realize the seriousness of the situation. In a panic, he hurriedly unlocked Parker's handcuffs. Zen had also tracked him down using the location data from the old mobile phone her boyfriend left behind. The two immediately started arguing upon reuniting, but Parker quickly noticed shadows lurking in the woods. Zen's ex-boyfriend was about to thank Parker for saving his life when Parker instantly turned him into a human shield. Parker answered the assassin's phone and Lozini's voice came through. He was furious about his men being taken down, but still declared that he had won this round because he had changed the treasure transport schedule to tonight. Parker immediately contacted his team to announce that the plan had to be launched immediately. These unreliable teammates were all dead drunk, so Parker had no choice but to forcefully command them to act. Philly was tasked with finding a large enough truck, while Grofield went to destroy the automatic safety system on the station tracks. Ed Mackey and his wife Brenda would pose as railway security personnel to infiltrate the control center. However, the plan quickly ran into trouble because the insider in the control center realized the situation was unstable and refused to let them in, even pulling out a gun to threaten his other colleagues. Meanwhile, Philly made a mockery of the plan. Being too drunk, he fell asleep in the driver's cab while trying to steal a truck. The truck driver himself had to wake him up and asked confused why he was in his vehicle. The driver paid no attention and drove away immediately. The insider in the control center began to regret getting involved in this path for money. But just as he hesitated, a daring employee secretly opened the main door switch of the control room while the insider was distracted. Everyone was rejoicing, but that heroic action immediately turned the employee into a blackmailer, leaving everyone open-mouthed in surprise. However, an unexpected issue arose. The control panel was not like the one in the drawing, and he couldn't find the button to increase the train's speed. The two argued in front of multiple hostages. An employee who couldn't stand the bickering anymore tipped them off that it was the numeric keypad on the right. The plan to accelerate the train was successfully completed, but Grofield had not yet reached the safety device's location. He jumped down to the platform and stood in the middle of the tracks, in the biting cold wind, intending to shoot the device, but due to tension and panic, the gun accidentally slipped through the gap and fell. With no other choice, he had to destroy the sturdy safety device with his bare hands. As the train roared toward him at extreme speed, its enormous headlight closing in like a countdown to death. Grofield gritted his teeth, used all his strength, and managed to destroy the device at the very last moment. Parker and Zen had arrived at the pre-planned derailment location and patiently awaited the target's arrival. However, the train sped through but did not derail as expected. Instead, it swayed and smoothly navigated the curve. Parker immediately recognized the mistake and hurriedly informed his teammates to block the train at the next sharp curve near the station. Grofield took a shortcut on his motorcycle to rush there quickly. Unexpectedly, while searching for the safety device, he was hit directly by a drunken Philly driving his truck. Before Philly could recover after hitting his teammate, his truck slammed into the height restriction barrier, drawing the attention of a nearby police car. Under Parker's continuous shouts, Grofield finally regained consciousness and aimed his gun straight at the safety device under the tracks. Sparks flew and the safety device was destroyed in the final second. Immediately after, the train hurtled into the next curve, but Parker realized it was a towering bridge. Accompanied by intense friction, the train derailed uncontrollably, and its massive body plunged down from the bridge. Zen reacted extremely fast. She sharply turned the steering wheel and floored the gas to escape. Thanks to Zen's masterful driving skills, both of them narrowly escaped disaster. As they pried open the cargo container and prepared to transfer the priceless treasure, they were horrified to discover it was full of rocks. Parker suddenly realized that Lozini had been one step ahead and had already moved the real treasure, leaving this trap for them to fall into. Sure enough, soon after, Lozini's men swarmed the scene, followed by a large number of police officers who had also heard the news. Everyone was forced to flee in chaos, but since their tires were damaged in the accident, they were stopped at an intersection. In this critical moment, another police car suddenly accelerated, ramming and flipping the surrounding police vehicles. Parker was stunned to realize it was Philly who had stolen a police car to reinforce them. Thanks to Philly's cover, everyone was able to narrowly escape. Although the plan failed, Parker was not discouraged. He calmed down and planned to find another breakthrough by targeting the buyer of the artifact. The man Parker had thrown downstairs earlier, Kincaid, was still alive and being treated in a hospital room. His girlfriend was constantly by his side. Kincaid's henchmen suddenly noticed a crowd gathering downstairs. After inquiring, they learned that a masked person was attempting to jump off the rooftop. The henchmen cautiously drew their guns to intervene, but it turned out to be Parker's trap. Parker and his teammates used the opportunity to change into police uniforms and easily infiltrate Kincaid's hospital room. Kincaid was gripped by extreme fear due to Parker throwing him down earlier. The psychological trauma made him barely able to look Parker in the face. However, the information he possessed was limited, and he didn't know the buyer's specific address. His girlfriend, who was nearby, conveniently searched the buyer's social media information and easily found a photo Phineas Paul had just posted, tagged at a high-end restaurant. Parker and his team followed the clue to the restaurant and kidnapped Phineas Paul. However, the billionaire confessed that he had not yet received the sea god statue. Based on what he knew, Lozini had moved it to a vault that was reputed to be impregnable. Parker immediately decided to split into two groups. He told Philly to stay and watch the billionaire while he and Grofield went to scout the vault. Unexpectedly, not long after they left, Philly started rambling non-stop, making the billionaire Phineas Paul roll his eyes in annoyance. Soon after, Philly himself grew tired and fell asleep in the chair. Phineas Paul saw a golden opportunity, quickly untied himself, and escaped from the restaurant, immediately reporting the news to Lozini. Lozini was furious upon hearing the news. He immediately rushed his henchmen to the vault that very night, and even confidently declared that the vault door was sturdy and impenetrable. When they arrived, the door had been blown open, and the vault inside was empty, with no sea god statue in sight. Lozini spotted Parker driving away in the distance and immediately ordered his subordinates to give chase. In the fierce battle, Parker unfortunately fell out of the car and was surrounded by Lozini's henchmen. In the nick of time, Zen appeared decisively, opening fire to rescue him. On the other hand, during the breakout, Grofield accidentally let the sea god statue slip from the vehicle, and it once again fell into Lozini's hands. Lozini quickly transferred the sea god statue to the mansion of the billionaire Phineas Paul that very night to complete the transaction. Phineas Paul was extremely delighted, stroking the precious gems embedded in the statue, his face beaming with joy. However, just then a gemstone suddenly became loose and fell out. When he bent down to pick it up, he was horrified to find a brand name engraved on the back. Clearly, this sea god statue was a fake. While he was still in shock, the dictatorial president led his elite bodyguards storming in, prepared to forcibly reclaim the treasure. Upon learning the statue was fake, the president instantly flew into a rage, assuming Lozini was trying to deceive him with cheap imitation goods. Only then did Lozini realize he had fallen into a trap, and he hurriedly led his team back to the vault in a panic. It turned out all of this was Parker's act of retaliation. He had secretly changed the code on the vault door and deliberately blown up other doors to create a false spectacle. They had used the fake sea god statue crafted by the rebel organization for the exchange, while the real one remained hidden in a deep pit. Just as Parker and his team were preparing to transport the real sea god statue out, Lozini rushed in with a large number of men, triumphantly declaring his victory. At this moment, Parker raised the remote control in his hand. He had pre-rigged the real sea god statue with explosives, so if Lozini dared to open fire, Parker would choose mutual annihilation. In a separate development, Zen and her teammates, while rescuing Philly, suddenly heard dense gunfire outside. Lozini mistook the gunfire for his own men shooting, unaware that it was actually the presidential guard. Parker had meticulously planned everything for Zen to use her old connections to pass information to the president's faction. Only then did Lozini fully realize that his organization had fallen into a disadvantageous position. He attempted to negotiate a temporary truce with Parker, but unexpectedly the latter pressed the detonator without hesitation. After an earth-shattering explosion, the $500 million sea god statue was reduced to ashes in a sea of fire. Everyone immediately retreated from the vault afterward. The next day, news spread everywhere, consisting of accusations from billionaires regarding the murky deal between Lozini and the president, with no one realizing that Parker and his team had quietly orchestrated the entire situation. Parker took out a bag of gemstones that he had pried from the sea god statue to distribute among his teammates as a reward. However, when it came to Zen, he called her aside into the next room. Although they had coordinated flawlessly in this operation and even saved each other's lives deep down, Parker still honored the promise he made to his late friend's wife Grace, so he gave Zen a share of the diamonds. The story ends here, but the director cleverly leaves an open conclusion, giving the audience the final answer to speculate and decipher. Did Parker ultimately strike against Zen, or did he uphold his original vow? It all remains a mystery.